When you think of Australia, what is the first city that comes to mind? Sydney, right? Well, it isn't just you. Many people think Sydney is the capital of Australia, and we can't blame them. After all, Sydney is one of those cities that lives in the mind long before you get to experience it. The city has so much to offer other than the famous Bondi Beach, Sydney Harbour Bridge, or the incredible Sydney Opera House. In today's video, we'll be exploring Sydney and taking a look at some interesting things to do. Stay tuned. Before we begin the video, if you're new to the channel, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the bell for the latest notifications and updates. That way, you'll never miss a video from us. With that said, let's not waste any more time and get right into today's content. If you have any plans of traveling to Sydney, you need to be prepared. Sydney is a pretty expensive city, with the daily travel budget for tourists being around $135 a day. Hotel accommodation alone can cost you well above $100. There are chances that you can find accommodation for cheaper, so make sure to do your research well before setting foot in this beautiful city. With that said, Sydney is totally worth visiting if you do your research. So let's not waste any more time and take a look at some amazing places to visit. Walk, climb, or cycle Sydney Harbour Bridge. Okay, let's start with the Sydney Opera Bridge. Sydney siders love their giant coat hanger, as they call it, which opened in 1932. The best way to experience this majestic structure is on foot. Stairs and lifts climb up the bridge from both shores, leading to a footpath on the eastern side. The western side, meanwhile, is a bike path. Getting the train to Milson's Point and walking back towards the city is the most spectacular. Climb the southeastern pylon to the Pylon Lookout, or ascend the Arc on the popular Bridge Climb experience. You can now book a trip with an Indigenous storyteller who will share their perspective on the city and country while you look over Sydney's magnificent harbour from on high. Explore secluded beaches and dramatic views from Watson's Bay. Lovely Watson's Bay, east of the city centre and north of Bondi, was once a small fishing village, as evidenced by the heritage cottages that pepper the suburb's narrow streets. It's a lovely day trip by ferry from Circular Quay, and you can explore South Head and have a leisurely lunch at Doyle's or Sunset Beers and Watson's Bay Beach Club Beer Garden. On the ocean side, the Gap is a dramatic cliff-top lookout. On the harbor side, closer to Watson's Bay Ferry, is the sheltered Camp Cove Beach to take a dip. If you've forgotten to pack your swimsuit, Lady Bay Beach is a clothing-optional nudist beach on the west side of the bluff just before you arrive at Hornby Lighthouse. Ride the ferry to historic Cockatoo Island. Australia was previously a British penal colony, and therefore there's a lot of history to learn. Studded with photogenic industrial relics, convict architecture, and art installations, fascinating UNESCO-listed Cockatoo Island opened to the public in 2007 and has regular ferry services, a campground, rental accommodation, and 2 cafe bars. Information boards and audio guides explain the island's time as a brutal convict prison, a shipyard, and a naval base. A spooky tunnel passes clear through the middle of the island, and you can explore the remains of the old prison. During World War II, most of the original sandstone buildings were stripped of their roofs and converted into bomb shelters. Solitary confinement cells were unearthed here after being filled in and forgotten in the 1890s. A range of tours run from the visitor center, from straight-up heritage tours to ghost yard paranormal and convict escape attempts. Stumble across Aboriginal rock art. It may come as a surprise to stumble across an art form that's so ancient in such a modern city, but Sydney is built on top of a giant gallery for Aboriginal art. Until recently, not much attention was paid to such things, and many works were covered over or destroyed. Today, with dot paintings from distant deserts being celebrated, Sydneysiders have started to wake up to the treasure trove in their own backyard. Look for rock art by the original custodians of this place on the headlands around the harbour, on the coast, and in nearby national parks such as Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park. Admire the Art Gallery of New South Wales. With its neoclassic Greek frontage and modern rear, this much-loved institution plays a prominent and sociable role in Sydney society. Blockbuster international touring exhibitions arrive regularly along with special events. While the permanent collection has a strong collection of 19th century European and Australian art, the highlights are the contemporary Indigenous gallery in the basement and the collection of 20th century Australian art, with some standout canvases by the big names of the local painting scene. Dine on delicious meals delivered with exemplary Sydney hospitality. Sydney's dining scene has never been more inventive and exciting. Restaurants serving food from across the globe, often with a uniquely Australian twist, can be found in every pocket of the city. Okay, it may be a little faddish and perhaps a bit too obsessed with big-name chefs, but it wouldn't be Sydney if names weren't being dropped. Thankfully, Sydney's food scene manages to juggle style with substance. Fine diners like Key and Encore by Claire Smith stand out as world-class on every front, from the views to the service to the exquisite menus on offer. Other Sydney hotspots, no less incredible in terms of quality dishes and top-notch hospitality, include Nomad, Mr. Wong, Cafe Paki, Long Chim, and Seafood Pioneers St. Peter. However, a takeaway Sri Lankan or a cheap noodles night with BYO wine could just as easily be your Sydney dining highlight. Tour backstage at Sydney Opera House. Designed by Danish architect Jorn Utzon, this incredible eye-catching building is Australia's most famous landmark. Visually referencing a yacht's sails, it's a soaring, commanding presence that comprises 5 performance spaces for dance, concerts, opera, and theater. You can wander around the outside to your heart's content. The most obvious way to experience the interior is to attend a performance, but taking a guided tour is highly recommended. Tours are available in several languages and include ones aimed at kids, as well as backstage tours, a food-focused tour, and one where guides will show you how to draw this iconic site. Bodyboard, learn to surf, or watch the icebergs at Bondi. Bondi is one of the world's most famous beaches, with constantly good waves and warm sea temperatures. It's also a great place to learn to surf. Let's Go Surfing is a well-established surf school based in North Bondi, offering lessons catering to practically everyone. There are classes for grommets, or young surfers aged 7 to 15, or adults, and women-only classes are also available. Alternatively, you can book a private tutor between a couple of people. Prices are lower outside the summer peak. Whatever you do, don't be a kook. Australians are pretty forgiving but not on the water, so respect the norms and etiquettes of local surfers. In the cooler months, you can forego the water and dine with epic views while watching the winter iceberg swimmers earning their stripes. Kayak to a secret beach. If you want to do something adventurous in Sydney, you should consider kayaking to a secret beach. A hidden jewel not far from Manly, Magical Store Beach can only be reached by water. Hire a boat or kayak from Manly Kayak Center at Manly, then cruise around to the sheltered 200-meter Cove Beach fringed by trees. The views of bushy North Harbour give the impression you've left the city entirely. As this is a breeding ground for fairy penguins, access is prohibited from dusk when the birds waddle in to settle down for the night. Visitors are also implored to leave the beach in the same condition as they found it in, or better. Take snacks, sunscreen, and plenty of water. Catch one of Sydney's spectacular festivals. Sydney's nocturnal calendar kicks off with a spectacular New Year's Eve fireworks display over the harbour and doesn't calm down for months. As soon as the Sydney Festival's myriad openings and events finish, the lights come up on the biggest party of them all, the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras in February. Winter brings fashion, literature, and film festival calendars to Sydney with opening nights, cocktail parties, and literary soirees, plus the spectacular Vivid Sydney in May, lighting the town up with projections and lights. Spring is football finals time. Whether it's rugby or Australian rules, try to get to a night game for the friendly atmosphere and epic crowds. Sydney is a great city with not just beautiful nature, but also amazing architecture, culture, art, and tradition. The city is a melting pot of diasporas from all over the world, and although it might be expensive, it's a great place to visit. Well, that's all for this video. Hope you enjoyed watching this one. Thanks for watching.